All right, welcome in. It's the MMQB Podcast with Albert Breer. We're trying something new here. This isn't the normal Friday morning podcast. This is going to be a video podcast. We're going to play with it. We're going to tweak it. We're going to do whatever we can to make this the best experience that we can for all of you guys. I need your help. Listen to this. Watch this. Give me your feedback. On my Twitter page at Albert Breer. On my Facebook page at Albert R. Breer. This is by no means a finished product at this point. We're trying to figure out what the best way to interact with all you guys is and give you guys another avenue to get to me so I can answer your questions and give you guys more content. So again, my Twitter page at Albert Breer, my Facebook page at Albert R. Breer. Hopefully you give us the time, listen to this all the way through, and then hit me up on either Facebook or Twitter. And I'm going to open up by giving you guys my feelings on the anthem and telling you that I'm like a lot of you, sort of anthemed out at this point. And the reason why is because I don't feel like anybody's talking to each other anymore. And so on Sunday for the first time this year, normally I have my TV responsibilities, but on Sunday for the first time this year, I was able to actually sit and watch all the games, and it was great. You know, doing that reminds me of why I do this for a living. There's a reason why, I go to high school games on Friday nights and why I spend a lot of my Saturdays watching college football and why I look forward to the Ohio State games more than almost anything over the course of the year. It's because I love football and I loved watching on Sunday. And it'd be one thing if the anthem subject was productive. And I think it was at the beginning. What it feels like now, and obviously it's brought to light by Mike Pence's stunt in Indianapolis, no one's talking to each other anymore. Everyone's talking at each other. On one side, it's about the flag and the military and the anthem. On the other side, it's about social injustice. And so feels like one side's trying to prove how patriotic they are, the other side trying to prove how progressive they are. And they're not discussing any of that with each other. They're just yelling. And hopefully next week when the owners congregate here in New York, and my expectation is they'll probably bring some players here too to discuss it, and Joe Lockhart, the communications boss at the NFL, said that the anthem topic will be front and center when the owners do meet here next week. Hopefully, they can figure out a way to make this productive again and to push this forward. Because it just feels like we're all talking in circles. And I don't want to do that here. So I'm going to stop with the anthem topic. Because, again, I'm anthemed out at this point. And we're going to jump right into my observations from Week 5. And again, this is all subject to change, but the format for right now, I'm going to give you 5 things that stuck out to me over the football weekend, and then we're going to take 5 of your questions, answer them right here. Okay, so my 5 observations from the weekend. Number 1, you got to start with the only undefeated team left in the NFL, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. And here's what I want to do. I want to start here with an appreciation of Andy Reid, who, look, rightfully, he is questioned for clock management towards the end of games. Rightfully, 19 years as a head coach now, he's questioned because he hasn't won a Super Bowl. That's a very, very major hole in his resume. But what I like about what I'm seeing from Andy Reid in 2017 is his ability to come off of where he's been as a coach for most of his career. And he's run one system. It's been very successful for him. And I think what we're seeing this year in Kansas City is a whole lot of innovation. You're seeing spread concepts, and it's not just the read option stuff. It's also run pass option. There's a lot of what they're doing that fits Alex Smith, that's helping them get the most out of Alex Smith, and it's also helping them get the most out of guys like Tyreek Hill and DeAnthony Thomas and their rookie, Kareem Hunt. And so you got to love what they're doing offensively. Defensively, they've done a nice job weathering the injury to Eric Berry, one of the most important players in the roster on either side of the ball. But, you look at Andy Reid's just his openness to moving things forward. The offensive coordinator, Matt Nagy, deserves some credit here. They have basically taken what his offense is, and he's one of the best play callers in the NFL as it is. Again, the questions about clock management are there, but he is one of the best play callers over the last 2 decades in the NFL. And he's taken the base of what that is, and he's been able to innovate it. He's been able to take some of the things that are happening at the college level and incorporate them within the framework of what he's doing offensively. And you know what that does? That makes it easier for all of these guys coming in to adapt, because that's the stuff that they're running in college. And as a result, they've become one of the most difficult teams in the NFL to defend. And just look at Andy Reid's resume, okay? There's a reason why he's been in the NFL. He's got 18 years in the books as an NFL head coach. He's made the playoffs 12 times. In those 12 times he's made the playoffs, he's advanced in the playoffs 8 times. He's done it with a variety of different quarterbacks. He got the most out of Michael Vick coming out of jail. And that was Vick's best year, better than any of the years he had in Atlanta. He made 4 straight NFC Championship games with Donovan McNabb, and now he's got Alex Smith playing at a level higher than he's ever played before. I think Andy Reid deserves a lot of credit. The number 2 offense in the NFL right now, there's a reason for it. It's not just talent. That's part of it, but it's his ability to innovate and build on what he already did well. Okay, topic number 2 for this week. Adrian Peterson is being traded now from the New Orleans Saints to the Arizona Cardinals. AD was never a good fit in New Orleans. And this is something I questioned with people there when the signing happened. I was given an explanation on it. I still didn't really buy it. The reason why is going back to what happened at the end in Minnesota before he got hurt. And at the end, I distinctly remember when the injury happened in October of 2016. I remember talking to coaches there who felt like taking Adrian Peterson out of the equation would actually open them up to do different things offensively, and they would improve as a result of losing Adrian Peterson, because they could bring in Jerick McKinnon, and Jerick McKinnon could do more in the passing game, so they'd be less restricted. And you think about that statement. This is one of the greatest players in the history of that franchise, one of the greatest players the Vikings have ever had. And here are coaches talking during the week that Adrian Peterson goes down, saying that the Vikings are going to be a better team without him. Adrian Peterson was as great at what he does as maybe any NFL player has been ever, right? Running between the tackles, being able to run with power, the combination of that power and speed, off the charts. Like one of the most talented guys ever to wear a football uniform. But he did specific things very well, and he always had offenses built around him. Everything was always centered around him and built to mitigate what his weaknesses were. And that's fine when he's a transcendent talent. That's fine when he's rushing for 18 yards. That's fine when he's the MVP of the league. But when he's a little bit less than that, and now he's taking things off the table for you offensively, that's something else. And that's why those Vikings coaches were saying that during the 2016 season. And that's, quite honestly, why I thought he was a tough fit for New Orleans. Because New Orleans asked their skill players to do everything. The guys who fit best there, the backs that are fit best there, look who they've had. Reggie Bush, Darren Sproles, now Alvin Kamara out of Tennessee, who's, coming out, like, is he a receiver? Is he a back? Like, they want backs who are positionless. And even Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram's a squatty, traditional-looking tailback, right? Mark Ingram can still catch the ball. From the beginning, I felt like Adrian Peterson was a difficult fit for an offense that asks all of its skill players to do a variety of different things. And the bottom line is, on October 10th, 2017, Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara are better players. So Adrian Peterson became expendable. Now, what does this mean to Arizona? I think as much as anything else, this is about finding a way to get to December in a position where you're still competing for a playoff spot when David Johnson's back in the equation. So much of what they did was built around David Johnson. So much of who they were going to be was built around David Johnson. They've gotten older with Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald. John Brown, who they expected to be a star, has had his injury issues. And so this year they made the conscious decision to build it more around the run game and build it more around the defense. And you took David Johnson out of the equation, and because the offensive line's had its problems, they're now at the bottom of the league in rushing. And so this is a Band-Aid measure to try to get in a position where you're still You can be well-rounded enough until David Johnson gets back in the lineup, they hope, in December. Okay, topic number 3, the Jaguars, 3-2. I think one of the biggest surprises in the league. And I'll tell you what's really interesting about this is the way that they've hid Blake Bortles, the way that they've won with defense. The defense outscored the Steelers last week. I don't think a lot of people realize that. They had 2 pick sixes in that game. The defense outscored the Steelers, and that's not smoke and mirrors. There's been investment on that side of the ball in Jacksonville. High draft picks, Dante Fowler, Jalen Ramsey, big-ticket free agents, Malik Jackson, Calais Campbell, A.J. Boye. There's talent on that side of the ball. They've developed an ability to make plays. We saw 10 sacks in the opener. Again, we saw 5 picks against Pittsburgh. So that looks very real. They've also developed an identity on offense, which is right along the lines of what Tom Coughlin and Doug Marrone were looking for when they were making guys do up-downs, and I've never seen that at the NFL level, making guys do up-downs during cals and training camp. This is what they wanted. They wanted to be the tough physical team that is chipping away and leaning on defenses, and there's a reason why Leonard Fournette breaks a 90-yarder at the end of that game. That's not by accident. That's because they kept pounding away, and the identity that they were looking to build is there, and eventually the dam broke. Eventually the dam for the Steelers broke. So here's what's interesting about this one for me. We've gone over a few times. You can, even in last week's game plan column, you can check that out at the MMQB.com. We've gone over a few times here how the 2018 veteran quarterback market is going to be borderline unprecedented. Kirk Cousins could be out there. Jimmy Garoppolo could be out there. Drew Brees could be out there. The Saints cannot franchise him. So you've got 3 premier quarterbacks out there, maybe potential premier quarterbacks. You've got maybe Sam Bradford or Teddy Bridgewater could be out there. And so you wonder, because generally lots of teams are looking for young quarterbacks, but the number of teams that are looking for veteran quarterbacks is smaller, just because there are less teams that are in win-now mode that way. You look at everything that I just said about the Jags, the dominant defense, the growing running game, the growing identity, the fact that Allen Robinson's there and Allen Hurns is there, isn't that a pretty attractive landing spot for a veteran quarterback? Like, say you're Drew Brees, say you're Kirk Cousins. I know Jacksonville's never seen as this destination, but if they can have above average quarterback play, that seems like it'd be a pretty good landing spot for somebody. And I know this, 70-year-old Tom Coughlin may not have the patience to wait for a Sam Darnold. I mean, they're not going to be in position to draft one of these guys to begin with if they keep playing the way they're playing, but like, does a 70-year-old Tom Coughlin want to wait for Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen or Josh Allen to develop? Or would he rather go and sign Drew Brees? If I'm Drew Brees, I look at it, and we'll see what happens with the Saints, but if I'm Drew Brees or I'm Kirk Cousins or I'm Jimmy Garoppolo, and we'll see about the availability of the latter two, but if I'm one of these guys, Sam Bradford, I look at it and I say, you know what, that's a pretty good situation. Okay, number 4, the Giants look awful, and we probably should have seen this coming, and I think that we're going to learn a lot about the future of the franchise over the course of the next 11 games. They are 0-5. They're now 0-6 since the boat trip. They are, I believe, at this point, I want to say it's like they won the first 2 games of the McAdoo era. I'm pretty sure right now they're 9-10 since then. And look, I think that there's going to be a referendum on the program there, and what's going on at the Meadowlands with Ben McAdoo, with Jerry Reese. And the reason why, I just look back at John Mara having to step in during that week and be the one to publicly reprimand Odell Beckham. And I go back to the boat trip and the nightclub during a playoff week in January. I go back to punching the hole in the wall, which Odell did after the playoff loss. I look at skipping April and May with his teammates, the way Odell did. And the one thing I've noticed, and I think other people have noticed too, people in that organization have noticed, is there's been a constant stream of justification for everything that Odell Beckham has done. In January it was, well, it's the player's day off. After the playoff game, well, he was frustrated. That's why he hit the wall. In April and May, this is their time. We're going to give him the benefit of the doubt here. We know he'll get his work done. And then I think it came to a head in September. Okay? I think that there was, when we saw, it got a lot of attention when Ben McAdoo came out like he did against Eli Manning for the delay of game penalty in the Detroit Monday night game. And I don't think that Ben McAdoo was talking to Eli Manning. I don't think Ben McAdoo was talking to the press. I think Ben McAdoo was talking through Eli Manning and through the media to the rest of his team, and basically saying, no one's safe. I'm willing to go after the quarterback. And if the quarterback can get it, you know what? You can too. And I think that's the right message to send. That's the way Tom Brady and Bill Belichick have operated forever in New England. Forever. You talk to anyone who's been in any of those meeting rooms, Tom Brady gets it worse than anyone else. And that sends the message to everyone that you're all accountable. And I think that's what McAdoo was trying to do with Eli. The problem was 6 days later, you have the dog peeing thing, and then after that game, the tone changed. It was, well, I wish everybody would focus on the catches he made. I wish everybody would focus on the touchdowns. I wish everybody would focus on what a playmaker he is and not what he did to cost our team. And that sort of thing resonates in the locker room. And then after that, 2 days later, John Mara has to come out and send the email to the reporters saying this isn't acceptable. I don't know about you, but I look at that and I say the owner has to step in during a game week? The owner has to step in and send that message? Would that have ever happened when Tom Coughlin was the coach there? I mean, look, I know he had his ups and his downs. There's certainly a standard set there. And so here's what's interesting going forward. Things could get really bad. The offensive line isn't going to get a whole lot better. And now they don't have the skill position talent to mitigate that. So Eli could take a beating, and this thing could go south in a hurry. I'm really, really interested to see the way that Ben McAdoo leads the team in the wake of everything that's happened over the course of the last 9 months. Because I don't think there's question about Ben McAdoo as an offensive coach or scheme-wise or building a staff. I think he's got a good staff. I think it's that thing that a lot of people really, I think we all sometimes lose focus of. That guy's got to be a leader. That guy's got to be the one that sets up the program and sets the tone for everybody, and that's where the questions, I think, are with Ben McAdoo. That's a reason why I think, and look, it's not all that. I mean, the offensive line issue was there last year. They were able to manage it. They had defensive depth issues last year, but they had tremendous health, so they never really became a bigger problem. But I look at it and I say, okay, let's see how he leads them now. It's easy to, when you're 11, when you're 10-4, whatever they were in early December last year. You know what? That's easy. Now let's see where this thing goes. Because I'll tell you this, the Giants have a tremendous opportunity every year to hire whoever they want. That is considered the brass ring of NFL jobs. And so that my experience with that organization tells me that they are going to be patient and that they are going to give Ben McAdoo rope. But someone reminded me last weekend, they were quick to pull the plug on Ray Handley after a couple of years after they lost Bill Parcells. And so it's not completely unprecedented that if they identify a problem in their organization, like we have the wrong leader, that they wouldn't. It's not unprecedented that they would pull the plug. Okay, number 5. Look, this is the team that I picked to win the NFC East, and I'm not pounding my chest here. And we've talked a lot about, on the podcast, on all the different things that I do. One of the ways that I like to categorize quarterbacks, there are quarterbacks you win because of, and there are quarterbacks you win with. There aren't very many quarterbacks you win because of. Aaron Rodgers proved again that he's one of them on Sunday with the way that he brought the Packers back against the Cowboys. I think Tom Brady is the only other one where it almost doesn't matter what you put around him. The baseline's 10 wins. They're going to be in the playoffs every year. There aren't very many players that are like that. And I'll tell you what, one young guy who I like a lot now, who I think is trending in that direction, who has lifted all boats, is Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. The reason I picked the Eagles to win the division before the year was really based on everything at the line of scrimmage, and the fact that a lot of teams have offensive and defensive line issues, and those positions have become tougher and tougher to develop, and the Eagles should have an advantage there, and they do. That offensive line has been great. The defensive line, again, perfect fit for what Jim Schwartz wants. They've got a lot of pressure players up there, Fletcher Cox, Finney Curry, Brandon Graham, and they added to that group with Chris Long and Timmy Jernigan and Derek Barnett in the offseason. But, man, the degree of difficulty on some of the throws that Carson Wentz made on Sunday, he was spectacular against Arizona. All right, 21 of 30. Didn't throw the ball that much. 304 yards and 4 touchdowns. Did throw a pick. He's still a young quarterback. There are going to be mistakes. But when you look at the degree of difficulty of some of the throws he was making, it really jumps off the screen. And here's the other thing. Is he's getting the most out of the guys around him. All of a sudden, it looks like Nelson Aguilar can kind of play. And that wasn't the case the last couple of years. So he's helped Nelson Aguilar with his development. He's getting something out of Torrey Smith. The Niners didn't get much out of Torrey Smith last year, right? And we'll see with Alshon Jeffrey. That might take a little time, but I really, really like what I've seen with Carson Wentz. And so that category, that the quarterbacks you win because of, I think at one time, my time covering the NFL, I think there was at one point I would have put 4 guys in that category. I would have put Brady, Breeze, Rodgers, and Peyton Manning. But it's an exclusive group, and it's the type of group where, again, when things kind of come undone around them, they're not going to go 6-10. And I think Carson Wentz eventually, not there right now, but eventually has the chance to get there. Okay, so what I want to do now, again, everything we're doing here is experimental. I will take your feedback on my Twitter page at Albert Breer, on my Facebook page at Albert R. Breer. Like my Facebook page. You can help me out there. I want to take 5 of your questions on Twitter. Maybe going forward, we'll incorporate Periscope in here, and then I can take your questions rapid fire. We're going to figure all of that out. Like I said, I think that the idea here is to try and make this as interactive as possible. But I do want to start here with your questions. Twitter's the easiest way for me to get questions from you. So question number 1, Jets will win how many games? This is from Isaiah Friedman, at Isaiah Friedman 3. Isaiah, I would say they'll be in the 5 to 6 win range, but I really think that you can look at what they've done now and you can say they made a lot of smart decisions and go right on down the list with the guys they got rid of. I mean, they were right about all of them. Nick Mangold's not on a team. Darrelle Revis isn't on a team. Ryan Clady is retired. David Harris was a healthy scratch last week for New England. Brandon Marshall was up and down, pretty mediocre by his standards, and now he's hurt. Eric Decker has been average in Tennessee. Obviously, Sheldon Richardson's still a big timer, but they got a second-round pick back for him. And they got another guy in Jermaine Kearse, who's now a leader in their locker room. So I think you can't argue with the purge. Every decision they made there makes sense. And what I like about where they're at now, and I don't think they're going to beat New England on Sunday, but what I like about where they're at now you look at it and you can turn around and you can say, okay, they've got picks. They've got a nice young base on defense with Leonard Williams and Darren Lee and Marcus May and Jamal Adams. They've got some sneaky good pieces on offense and Robbie Anderson and Brandon Shell. There are some decent pieces. Those aren't cornerstones, but some decent pieces to build on. And now they can move the thing forward. The problem, of course, is if they're not that bad, how are they going to solve the quarterback question? Okay, question number 2. This is from Chris Pickett. That's at Sacco for Life. Is it time to panic about Kaiser? Should I be making that custom Darnold sweater? Look, I don't think when they drafted Deshaun Kaiser, this was ever lock, stock, and barrel. That's their quarterback of the future. I think I know that Kaiser has impressed them and has, over the last 6 months, has it been 6 months? No. 5 months since he got in the building, he's exceeded their expectations. Okay. There were off-field questions about his maturity. He's been more mature than they thought. There were questions about how he handles problems. He's handled problems better than they thought. And so there were enough good signs there that tell you, okay, let's see where this goes. And I've maintained this from the start. Since when Deshaun Kaiser got that job, he got the opportunity to prevent the Browns from drafting a quarterback in 2018. He got the opportunity to say to management, you don't need one. And he hasn't done that yet. And I don't know if he will do that. I don't think he's been horrible end to end. But if you think Sam Darnold is Troy Aikman, Deshaun Kaiser hasn't done anywhere near enough to prevent you from taking Troy Aikman in the 2018 draft. And there's precedent for it too. The precedent is the Panthers. 2010, they take actually another Notre Dame quarterback and Jimmy Clausen with the 45th pick. That didn't prevent them from taking Cam Newton the next year. So I don't think this is in any way I don't think the drafting of Kaiser in any way prevents them from drafting a quarterback at the top of the 2018 draft. Question number 3 is Big Ben Finish. This is from Ben Kennedy at Super Ben Kent M. We heard these questions about Philip Rivers a few years ago. I don't think that the answer to that question is no. I don't think the shelf life for quarterbacks is what it used to be. I think those guys can generally now, based on the way that they're protected, based on the way that they train, most of those guys can easily make it into their late 30s, health permitting, as long as they don't take some wild shot that, puts them in a different state of being able to go out there and play the position. I think they can I think most of them can play into their late 30s now. The biggest question is, do you want to? And do you have the desire to? And are you going to do everything that it takes to put yourself in a position to do that? Because what Brady and Manning did to play into their late 30s and into their 40s, and Peyton Manning didn't quite make it into his 40s, but Brady's done to play into his 40s, is ridiculous. You have to be maniacal to make it that far. You have to be maniacal to keep yourself at the level where you need to be. And so that's the question with Ben. It's, does he want to do it? Because you really have to sell out to be able to do it. And I think Aaron Rodgers actually I think that's part of what we're seeing from Rodgers now is he got hot at the end of last year, and everything you heard from people around him was that he rededicated himself. And a rededicated Aaron Rodgers looks pretty scary. Okay, question number 4 from David Pham. That's at David Vu Pham. 5 top defenses in the NFL. My top 5 defenses in the NFL. So I went and I looked at the stats, and I'm going to give you guys the chalk here. The 3 defenses that are at the top, I think, belong in the top 5. In the top 5, I'm saying the top 3 in total defense. That's Denver, Cincinnati, Carolina. Denver's been impressive in that over the last 2 years, they've had to replace 5 starters. Danny Trevathan's gone. Malik Jackson's gone. DeMarcus Ware is gone. TJ Ward's gone. Sylvester Williams is gone. So this is the starting lineup is about half of what it was in 2015 when they won the Super Bowl. So they've done an impressive job kind of restocking the shelves there, and they've obviously got a really, really good core with Talib and Vaughn and Derek Wolfe and Chris Harris. And so they've done a nice job filling in around those guys. Cincinnati's been very, very inconsistent on offense, but their defense has been legit all the way through. And even in the games they've lost, you think about the Houston game, they pretty much shut the Texans down. They did a nice job against the Bengals, against the Ravens on opening day. So they've been fine defensively, and they belong there. Carolina, number 3. This isn't surprising. I mean, I think any defense that my feeling is when Luke Kuechly's healthy, he's one of these players like Ray Lewis. he's never going to be part of a bad defense. And he wasn't healthy last year. He's dealing with the concussion. And so they had all that turnover in the secondary, losing Josh Norman, relying on all the young guys. All those young guys are a year older now, and Luke Kuechly's back in the lineup. And so I think that they're right back where they were. This is one of those defenses, and I remember talking to Sean McDermott about it a couple of years ago, where the guys on the defense pride themselves on it being, it's not just a one-year thing. Like, this is who they are, and it's such a huge part of who the franchise is. And I remember talking to those guys. I talked to Kuechly about this too, about them being like the Steelers or the Ravens, where they're known for defense. So they belong there. The other two teams that I would put in that group that aren't top 5 statistically are Minnesota and Washington. Minnesota's been, the Vikings defense has kind of carried them through all the quarterback issues that they've had. They deserve a lot of credit for that. They look good on Monday night. And then the Redskins, I think their talent on defense has gotten a lot better. Jonathan Allen, in their last game against Kansas City was borderline unblockable. They've got Ryan Kerrigan. They've had lower round picks like Martell Spate that have come up big for them. Obviously, Josh Norman's there now. And so I think Washington, at least through the first quarter of the season, belonged in the top 5 defensively. Last question for the week. I'm going to go down here. Number 5, Dan Parker, at FindParker89. Odds that New England signs Cookie, that's Brandon Cooks, to a long-term deal this year or next year. Typically, they haven't paid receivers at the top of the market. I think this is going to depend on what he wants. They have him this year. They have him for his option year next year. The franchise tag for receivers will be probably well over, probably 16, 17 million. You figure guys like Beckham will sign by then, probably 16, 17 million dollars by the time we get to the 2019 offseason. So it's going to be expensive to sign him. The other thing you have to remember, this is going to be a guy going into his second contract. Generally, that's a life-altering money. And then what's going to happen at quarterback? Is Brady still playing? Is Garoppolo? It's just, there's a lot of variables there. So I don't think that it's fair to answer that question. So what I'm going to do here, Will, is I'm going to end this podcast, and I appreciate you guys coming out. Again, I want your feedback. Just do what you can to get me all the feedback that you can so we can make this better. This is sort of an experiment, but me and Will have been talking about it for a little while now, and I want to make it as good as I can. This is another way for us to interact with you, and that's the name of the game now, interacting with the audience. So leave feedback on my Twitter page. That's at Albert Breer. Leave feedback on my Facebook page. That's at Albert R. Breer. You like my Facebook page, I'll put a lot of my content up there, so you can check us out there. Always remember to listen to the MMQB podcast with Peter King, the MMQB 10 Things podcast, and one more time, this podcast, the MMQB podcast with Albert Breer, YouTube edition. I think we can call it that right now, YouTube edition. You can get us wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Play, and Apple Pod. Did I say Apple Podcasts? Apple Podcasts. There you go, Will. Same time next week. We'll be here. Again, leave us your feedback. We'll make some changes. We'll keep moving this thing forward as we go along. I'll look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday.